Honey, let's play. Honey, I need some. Please. Honey ko. I need some rewards. Kakainis ka naman.
Appreciate you taking the time to do this right here. I know this can't be easy, the things that you're about to talk about, and I just want to commend you first for having the bravery to come forward and tell your story. Austin, let's talk about how old you were when the situation occurred that led to you getting locked up. And what happened when you were 21 years old?
As soon as I turned 21, I started getting into drinking and
you got into a car accident.
Yeah.
Test Alpha is online.
I'm born with talent.
You had told me that you were going the wrong way on the interstate. You said that you were drinking as well. Do you remember anything about what could have caused you to end up going the wrong way? You told me also that you had to be
Welcome, Mobile
hospital,
Legends.
and then also that
5 seconds till the enemy reaches the battle. Smash them. All troops deployed. The flower language of Macchiola Incarnate. Don't test me. You have been slain. True. I haven't done that.
just from
If only I had freedom. I am the top student of the academy after all. Launch attack! If only I had freedom. Don't test me. You, I haven't done enough. I am the top student of the academy after all. Launch attack! Would you help me? Enemy rampage! Don't test me. Launch attack! The enemy has slain the turtle. Initiate retreat rampage!
so
Try this magic! Our turret has been destroyed. Initiate retreat! An ally has been slain. Shut down! Launch attack! Launch attack! Launch attack! I am the top student of the academy after all. Try this magic! Find my brother. Your team destroyed a turret. An ally has been slain. Initiate retreat.
I had been approached and I was thinking that maybe it wasn't going to be as bad as it ended up. But I've been approached and advice seen from him. But what I took the nicest was I guess a thing called Junebug and Exorcism.
Our turret
I
has
was
been
not familiar with. And
So they were being nice to you because they
Our turret is under attack.
actually turns out that I had talked to a few of the guys, and the reason that I've been approached for
What did they say when they came up to you to approach you?
labeled me as a guy that had money and was scared and said, "This is how this is gonna go. I'm willing to look out for you and help you. I got your back. You're gonna run into a lot of things because you're new down here. You're a little guy. A lot of people are gonna try you. But if you each week when your money comes in, if you look out, help me out, I'll make sure you are protected and nobody else.
How much money were they trying to get you to pay per week?
You get about $70 a month.
So you're saying you can go to commissary for $70 and they wanted what, 60 of it?
60 of it.
$60 a week for these guys to try to protect you.
Right.
Did you go along with this, or what was your reaction to this when they said this?
I'm not gonna lie.
Gaze into the
I took hold of it and said, yeah. That's my first action. I was like, protect you. Okay. As long as the local protect you.
not getting, and you're still having problems. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And when I realized that I wasn't getting protection, I didn't know how to, I guess, confront
The guys.
the guys that I was paying and go, hey, what happened?
You know, you say you're paying for this, but you're still having problems. What were some of those problems that you were having?
I was getting, they would have like fight nights, and I'd be coming up each night in the wall to face somebody and to kind of stand up and fight it out.
You had to do this?
And we had to do this, or don't know, so I just do it.
Welcome to Mobile Legends. 5 seconds till the enemy reaches
I
the
had to get a fight probably about 3 times every day.
Every day you're
All
fighting
troops
free.
deployed.
Every
I only have time for handsome guys. This little baby is the will of the abyss. Do you think I should dye my hair blue?
Problem upon first getting there, and I mean, time just doesn't seem like it's going very well for you at all. How far into this year that you had to serve are we talking about while all of this is taking place?
I had all these issues from my first set foot in my first school in my state.
So from the first day, you're having
So I could get to my bump. I hadn't got to my bump before I was for protection.
Let's talk about, and I know this is going to be hard for you to talk about, but I really want you to tell everyone what you went through while you were locked up. Aside from the extortion, aside from the fighting, you went through another very traumatic experience while locked up. And I would like you to share that with us.
About 3 weeks in, I got the process and got shipped to my first meeting post Brown Creek. I started school, and I guess I had a normal routine, so I woke up one day thinking I was late, and went to Henderson, and once I got in the doors, there was nobody. Clearly, it was Wednesday through Saturday, and I wasn't thinking really. There was not a single person in my. As soon as I stepped foot in electrical wiring, the door shut right behind me. When that door hit, my face hit to the ground immediately, and all I saw was 4 people.
An enemy has been slain.
Anytime I know this has got to be very difficult to talk about.
I never knew what it was like to be jumped, or to be like, getting beat up and everything.
Your team destroyed
But
a turret.
having 6 built guys around me,
An enemy has
hitting,
been slain.
beating, holding me down,
An ally has been
raping
slain.
me,
An ally has been
and
slain.
taking turns without having any way to get out. Even struggling. When I tried, I struggled to the point to where they're literally, it took 2 of them just to keep me down.
With all the time that I've served, I've heard of things taking place like this. I've never met anyone who was actually able to talk about this. And I just want to say real quick, it takes a lot of bravery for you to sit here and be able to tell the story.
A few minutes in, after realizing I was helpless, the thoughts were going through my head. That giving up. Like, all the pain from it, the thought crossed my mind to just, to not be around, to actually be it, would probably have felt better than the feeling that I was feeling lying on that ground. And
So you were thinking there's a possibility these guys were going to kill you?
yeah, still this day, I'm blown away that they did it.
When this is over with, do these guys get in trouble for this? Do they get caught? What happens next?
I was taken to the nursing station, and then from there, I was transported to urgent care. And I had to kind of explain what I knew had happened, which wasn't a lot. I walked in the classroom, dark guys, and attacked. I didn't see faces. I didn't have reason why. I really didn't know I was there.
Our turret has been destroyed.
As soon as I walked in the classroom and I realized that was the last time I had their faces in my mind, because I had not stepped foot anywhere near the mile of the bed. I was told that I was going to be flagged, which I am. Yeah.
Our turret has been destroyed. Launch attack! You have slain an enemy!
Basically, because I was too scared. I didn't.
An enemy has been slain. Our turret
For
is
me,
under
don't get me
attack.
wrong, I've never been through something as severe as it in my entire life, but I wasn't trying to hurt.
Initiate retreat! Initiate retreat!
I wasn't trying to make it continue and be scared for the rest of my life, everywhere I walk. I do every now and then catch myself looking around, somebody passes me, just trying to get a snapshot of those guys,
Enemy
to
has
know
been slain.
what if one escaped, anything like that, or what if one got in touch with his homeboy. I don't live every day walking around scared it's gonna happen, but certainly to it.
So throughout the rest of your time after you dealt with this, did you deal with any more problems, or because you were monitored more severely or more closely, were things a little easier for you?
I got over the protection part. I got over the protection and people had laid on that, but they were still wanting all my canteen. And more as time went on, I was getting tougher about it. And I was always on the go. They
Our
only
turret
kept me
has been
at camp
destroyed.
for a short amount of time, due to the fact of if anything getting brought up, that was like a trigger. Moving to another camp.
So within a year that you served, how many different places do you go to?
On average, you're supposed to only go to about 2. I went through probably about 8 or 9.
You finally get released after serving your time. With everything that you've gone through, this still isn't over for you yet,
Initiate
because
retreat.
you find out something something else that's pretty detrimental as well. And would you share that with us?
Yeah. As I got released in February, I already didn't know where to start, but I knew I needed to get back into the hang that I used to be with a normal life. And don't get in different checks and doctor and everything. And I went to my doctor visit, and because of being incarcerated, even though they do tests and blood work and everything like that, and I had blood work done after my incident with the guys, I needed to get it done again. And I got it done again, and usually you get the results back within 2 weeks. When it comes to HIV, STDs, herpes, all that. It took 6 weeks for them to get me back where I was. After about 4 weeks, and talking to them, I knew something was wrong.
I only have time. Launch attack!
And that 6 week mark, when I got my papers back, saying that I was, I had the
Sure. An enemy has been
24
slain.
years, STD-free. I
Double kill. Ally has been slain. You have slain an enemy.
diagnosed with HIV.
Do you think I should go by
This
your
comes from
ally has been
This,
slain.
this was pinpointed back to my incident with rapes. It's one thing after the next. It's, you think you're over it, and then something else happens.
often you get in a car accident when you're 21 years old, you take a man's life, you end up getting sentenced to a year for that and go through some of the most traumatic experiences I think anybody on the face of this planet should go through. Since going through everything that you've been through in your life, what is your mind state like now?
I've got my feet back on the ground, and I've been able to get over all my bridges and get things, for the most part, back to how I used to have them. But every day, I mean, I think for the rest of my life, I'm still be struggling.
Dark abyss.
I just want
I will lead you to victory.
people like me, 21, 45, 65, however old you are,
Our turret is under attack.
decide to drink or have always been drinking, that think they never get behind the wheel, like I did, it can still happen. And I don't.
An enemy has been slain.
I think every day
turret
of
is under
how many
attack.
people make the
Our
same choice
turret
I
has
make
been
and get lucky.
destroyed.
Make it home.
But all it takes is that one time.
All it takes is that one time. That one party I had my car parked. The whole time I drank. That one time I had access to my vehicle. To a vehicle. Was my one time.
You know, again, with everything that you've been through, to be sitting here right now and at least attempting to try to make the most of your life with all that's on your plate, with everything that you went through leading up to where you are right now, I think that speaks volumes about your character. I don't think there's a lot of people who can go through what you've been through and still be able to carry on the way that you are now. It takes a lot of guts to come here to tell the story that you've told. It takes a lot of bravery and courage. I personally couldn't even imagine what you've gone through.
Initiate
I just want to say thank you for sharing this story with us. I know you deal with a lot of emotional and psychological issues from this. The baggage that you carry has just got to be immense. But to be able to take that and to still try to push forward, that takes a strength that, that's just a strength that's just unbelievable. Austin, I hope a lot of people have heard your story who possibly would be dealing with drinking problems. Maybe they don't even feel like they have a drinking problem. But I hope your story alone is able to open the eyes of so many who could end up in a situation just like that you in. Austin, thank you for taking the time to meet with us and tell us the story that you've been through, even things that you don't even wish on anybody.
Yeah, bro.
I'll give you a chance to join my family.
You got all kinds of stuff. People beating up people for commissary. You got people beating up people for their tennis shoes. You got people just sodomizing people. Just going rambunctious.
Launch
Someone
attack.
comes in and kind of scared or hesitant and stuff like that, shy, he's gonna get turned out. Chances are real high, that you're gonna get turned out.
Initiate retreat. Dark abyss. An
they rape them. You know, go in there and rape them, you know, and guys sometimes, you know, commit suicide because of that.
To all my family that I ever knew, I can't live life being mistreated, lied, and stolen from, and most of all being hurt. And most of all mean being behind bars when I say being hurt.
They made one conversation. And they was calling me. And he said, Mom, I'm emotional and I appreciate it. That's the last time I heard ever how this was.
The physical exam and the records did document that there were tears in the anus at certain times. They usually call it at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, given as a diagram of the clock. Even though it was documented, it was just covered over it as if it never happened.
I found forgiveness for those who have hurt me in my life, which has been a very short one, only 17 years.
Well, Rodney, he was a really small stature person. He probably didn't weigh 105 pounds at the most. I'll never forget his face and his eyes. He had the sweetest face. And he smiled. He smiled a lot. Unfortunately, in the prison, there's a hierarchy or a pecking order. There are those that they call the haves and the have-nots. Rodney would be considered a have-not.
I'm very sorry to end my life this way, but if I don't do this, someone will. I'm saying I'd rather die of my own free will than be killed. That's why I must do this.
Flames come out of the trash can that I would say at least 10, 15 feet high from different chemicals poured in and it's lighting it. You know, it's barely been burnt. In a matter of minutes they had it out. But it's the fact of what little things she can do that can still have you put to prison. You know, misdemeanor arson, where did it get us? You know, it was funny the time being, but where did it get him today? I mean, it's just hard to sit here and look at this and realize this is probably one of the last spots I actually seen him out in that yard.
A kid like that shouldn't have been in prison. But because of the judicial system, it's sending a lot of young, troubled kids to the joint because they don't know what else to do with it. The classification system, which had been running, probably should have kept him out of a cell or out of an environment where a guy was sodomizing.
I think he was desperate, and unfortunately, in this case, there were people in this department I was in that were less than professional, to say the least. The psychologist said, he's just another fucking inmate. And I rebutted. I said, but he's being raped and they're beating him. And he said, he probably likes it.
Frankly, in my own experience, it has almost never happened that we came up and verified that the offense did take place, or if the offense, or if there was some sexual activity, there wasn't some consensual agreement involved. Now, I'm not saying that rape doesn't take place in the penitentiary, because it does.
You know, we see this pattern in some of the investigations that express this disbelief that a guy who did not want to have anal sex could be the victim of a rape. You know, that somehow, if it happened, it was because the guy wanted it.
State grievance, 12/21/95. I have been sexually and physically assaulted several times by several inmates. I'm afraid to go to sleep, to shower, and just about everything else. I'm afraid that when I'm doing these things, I may die at any minute. Please, sir, help me.
You were seen by the Unit Classification Committee on December 18, 1995, and your request for protection was denied unanimously. Unless you have new information to support your case for protection, your grievance is denied.
11396. I fear that my life is in danger. I've been threatened, jumped, and nearly stabbed many a times. I request to be placed on protective custody.
You have been reviewed twice by the Unit Classification Committee. Both times your request for protection was denied. Unless you have information to present, your request is still denied.
I called the ward. They asked the ward what was going on. What was he doing, Dad? So he wasn't doing it. He told me he even told Rodney. Learn to grow up. You're just a little boy. Learn to grow up. This happens every day. Learn how to get over this. What you feel. And I've been told that so many times.
Even when I would ask him, I said, I'm trying really, really hard to get you some help. Can you hang on? And he'd say, I'll try.
Yes, I love you all. I wish I could be with you all. Spiritually, I am. Signed, Rodney Hewlin. I love you, Mom and Dad.
Request backup. You have been slain. Enemy double kill. Enemy rampage. An enemy has been slain. Initiate retreat.
Love 'em or hate 'em, Creed was your quintessential 90s rock band. They were bigger than life. They carried the torch. There was something about them that really connected with people, particularly in Middle America, where some really wanted to dip their feet into rock music, but were sort of uncomfortable with what some would consider to be an anti-biblical sentiment portrayed in the lyrics of some bands' music. At least that's what we were told during the Satanic Panic. So in comes Creed. They're edgy, dangerous, larger than life, but they also unapologetically love Jesus. And there was something about that really connected with people throughout the United States. And from there, it propelled the small local Florida band to a massive level of fame, untouched by virtually any other group during that era. And what followed was sort of your classic rock and roll story. Fame, excess, and unfortunately a story that we hear far too often. Creed had every reason to take over the world for the next 30 years. But unfortunately, the darkness that tends to come with fame just got in the way. And despite their overwhelming success and massive widespread fan base, Creed just sort of faded away. Today on Rockfeed History, we're going to take a deep dive on where Creed came from, where they went, and what they're up to today. Through our research of past interviews with band members, public statements, and various other sources, we'll do our best to try and give you the most accurate depiction of what happened to Creed. Love 'em or hate 'em, Creed really is a case study of how some bands just connect in parts of the country where other bands don't. But sometimes, too, some bands can be a lesson of what not to do, and also how sometimes, through the This is What Happened to Creed. Before we get started, if you're new here, we're a YouTube channel dedicated to hard rock and heavy metal news. We post news virtually every day, so if you're down with that, be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on breaking hard rock and heavy metal news. Rock and heavy metal news. Okay, here's the video. Creed's faith and the religious themes that surrounded even the title of their name followed the band for the duration of their career, but it wasn't something that they particularly pushed on others. They never signed a deal with a contemporary Christian label. They didn't perform in Christian music venues, which were scattered throughout the country and still are today, and they never really got picked up by Christian radio. Though anybody who had studied the Bible and read the titles of their songs or their band name knew immediately what this group was about. Songs like My Sacrifice, What's This Life For, One Last Breath, With Arms Wide Open, and so many others. It was apparent to anybody who was down with JC that Creed was on your side. And in the rock world where that's not always the most popular theme, they were in the big time. It's really hard to say whether or not that was an intentional strategic decision by the band or their management. It's unlikely given the fact that the band didn't really go after that highly lucrative market of contemporary Christian music. And as we would later learn, the members of Creed had varying standards on religious beliefs as it pertained to their personal conduct. More on that later. Creed got their start as a local band in Tallahassee, Florida back in 1993. Vocalist Scott Stapp was a founding member with Mark Tremonti, the guitar legend himself, and they were classmates in high school and also friends at Florida State University. A few years later, reunited and bonded by their mutual love and admiration of music, Scott and Mark decided to launch a band. They had some local auditions and eventually recruited bassist Brian Marshall and drummer Scott Phillips. They had a dude who was their rhythm guitarist, but he had left by the end of the year. And from that decision, they decided to remain as a four-piece band. Believe it or not, despite scoring a major label deal just a few years later, Creed actually penned some of their biggest hits completely on their own. In the meantime, they were gigging at local bars and developed somewhat of a local following. Creed really wanted to develop more of a professional standing, at least in the local market, as they worked their way up in the industry. So they worked with a local promoter to let them play in Tallahassee, and they were playing mostly covers, but they worked hard to develop their set. They eventually recorded their debut album without a record deal for around $6,000, which, according to some accounts, was actually initially funded by the guy who gave them their first real gig at a local show. That album was, yes, you guessed it, My Own Prison, which, with a whopping budget of just $6,000, would later go on to become one of the top-selling records of all time. And that is what we call authenticity. There are many people who would assume that with a band like Creed that had such major label success, that they were curating all their songs through teams of complicated writing processes, but in all actuality, it really was just a team of local boys getting it done in the studio, and they were really making things happen. They sold about 6,000 copies throughout the state of Florida, and they didn't even have a deal. My Own Prison, with their impressive local sales figures, was sort of circulating through the industry when, in May of 1997, someone from Wind Up Records heard the album and made the immediate decision that they wanted to sign the band. Several members of the label at Wind Up Records flew down to Tallahassee to see Creed perform live and then decide whether or not they were going to give them a deal. That person was Diana Meltzer from Wind Up Records, and she later said in an interview, seeing the energy in the room when Scott Stapp stepped up to the mic and hearing his powerful voice fill the room alongside Mark Tremonti's now legendary guitar riffs and that big Creed anthemic sound was all I needed. While the band had recorded their own album, it was later remixed to give it more of a radio-friendly sound. At this point, Creed was off to the races, and they dropped their milestone singles, My Own Prison, What's This Life For, Torn, and One. Every single one of those songs reached #1 on the Billboard Hot Mainstream Rock Tracks. And of course, they were the first band, just generally speaking, the first band ever to accomplish such a feat with their debut album. And Creed's success happened in a very different way from bands that we've talked about before. Creed wasn't heavily featured on MTV. No, when you've got the support of Middle America, you can make some amazing things happen. These are the folks who really love their hard rock music, but weren't necessarily turning on MTV to be told what they should listen to. They knew what they liked and they formed their own opinions. And there, they found a home with Creed, a band that oftentimes shared their religious beliefs and delivered powerful, authentic messages through their own songs. Creed was rewarded big time for that. They sold over 6 million copies, going obviously 6 times platinum, and the album received mostly favorable reviews. With their landmark success, Creed wasn't stopping anytime soon. There wouldn't be a sophomore slump for Creed. If anything, they were definitely about to take things to the next level. So in comes their second album, Human Clay. Another record breaker, there were no signs of slowing things down. They only got bigger. Their first single was Higher. Believe it or not, even though they released Human Clay, their album My Own Prison was still actually performing very well on the charts. Their sophomore effort debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and went on to sell over 10 million copies. 16 million albums and 2 records. Not bad. That makes Creed one of very few artists in history to be certified diamond. Another thing about Creed, for all the trash that people tend to talk about them, they won a Grammy, fair and square, for their song With Arms Wide Open, which won Best Rock Song back in 2001. To put that in context, they beat out Kryptonite by 3 Doors Down, Again by Lenny Kravitz, Bent by Rob Thomas and Matchbox 20, and Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers. Man, that's a good song. The following year, Train won that award for Drops of Jupiter. While Creed had a significant amount of wind in their sails, they weren't necessarily making making friends among their peers. Here's Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst talking about his experience with Creed frontman Scott Stapp at the time.
The guy is out of his mind. Like, he thinks he's a better human than everybody. He claims all this spirituality, this super killer guy. He doesn't give a damn about any of his fans. He ignores everybody. And you walk by his dressing room, his people, they look at you and they go, "You do not approach the band. You do not talk to the band. You do not look at the band." And you're just like, what is the deal with this? And he's all, he's just like, "Hey man, I am badass."
Fred,
It's like, come on, man, put your feet on the ground, because one of these days that's going to go away and nobody can have anything to do with you if you act like that.
While big names like Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst weren't necessarily buying into the hype, there were millions upon millions of fans globally who were. That's why their subsequent third album, Weather, was once again a landmark success for the band. The album was a #1 debut on the Billboard Top 200 and sold a whopping 6 million copies. It was around this time, though, that Creed started to plummet. Not so much in terms of fan interest. As a matter of fact, that never really dwindled. But there was some noticeable troubling behavior from that of Creed frontman Scott Stapp. While the band's album Weather was a significant success, it was reportedly delayed due to a vehicle accident that Creed Scott Stapp got into at the time, suffering the concussion and vertebrae damage. Tragically, just like many others who unintentionally met the same fate, Stapp reportedly became reliant on pain medication as a result of his injuries. While much of this was sort of quietly unfolding behind the scenes, it began to bubble over into the public eye. Notably, an infamous performance by Creed on December 29, 2002 in Illinois eventually led to litigation from 4 disappointed fans who claimed Stapp was so intoxicated and or medicated that he was unable to sing the lyrics of a single Creed song. Eventually, the band released an apology that stated, "We apologize if you don't feel that the show was up to the very high standards set by our previous shows in Chicago. We also understand and appreciate the fact that there has been much concern about Scott's health, and he is taking a much-needed break at home in Orlando. For now, we hope that you can take some solace in the fact that you definitely experienced the most unique of all Creed shows." For his part, Stapp later denied that he was intoxicated at all, instead saying that what fans claimed was him passing out on stage was actually, quote, "a symbolic personal gesture." He said, "It was a symbol that I didn't think anybody had my back at the time. Some people get it, some people don't." Years later, Stapp would understandably admit that he was suffering from substance abuse issues at the time. This was reported by the Chicago Sun-Times. It's worth noting that that lawsuit that we mentioned was eventually dismissed. As the band Creed had noted in their statement, Scott Stapp would be taking some time alone to himself at home in Orlando. After their monumental global success, the band unceremoniously revealed that they had disbanded a year later in 2004. At this point, Creed was the biggest rock band of the previous decade. They'd sold 24 million albums, and guitarist Mark Tremonti revealed to MTV that, quote, "We had gotten together 2 or 3 times and nothing happened. We got our instruments and played, but neither of us was taking it seriously. We were just running in circles. There wasn't a vibe like on the previous records. It felt very job-like. We knew that it would take us years to get a record out." The report stated that personal issues, mostly between Stapp and the rest of Creed, caused an irreparable rift that ultimately led to the band's demise. Tremonti said, "Scott and I hadn't been close for a while, and things just weren't working out. None of us really argued amongst each other. It was always just Scott who had the problem." He said, "It's not fun to count on other people when they're not that focused. Scott wasn't in the mindset that we were. He wasn't as focused on the current tour. He had 800 things on his mind, and I think that distracted him from what we were doing." Speaking on the show we previously mentioned, Tremonti said, "My entire family was at that show, so I was very irritated, but I forgave Scott for it. I talked to him about it. He didn't offer any type of explanation. That's probably what bothered me the most. There was no closure on it. It was like, let's keep moving on, and I was like, but we've got to address these issues. But we just never did. By that point, their relationship had deteriorated internally within the band." He said, "We didn't really speak too much, so as for what he did on his personal time, we had no idea. We just knew that he would just slowly act a little more distant and do things that we didn't really approve of. So we really didn't know what happened in Chicago, except it was a low point in a long year. When they were unable to reconcile, Tremonti introduced the idea of a world without Creed. We wanted it to be fun, he said, and it just got to the level where it was so political and there was so much drama that it drove us crazy, and you just can't. We wanted to do this for the music, and you're not supposed to be in a rock band to be miserable or have to walk on your tiptoes around people. For his part, guitarist Mark Tremonti and drummer Scott Phillips persevered after their tumultuous time in Creed. They formed the tremendously popular rock band Alter Bridge, and Tremonti also has his successful solo act, aptly named Tremonti. To date, Alter Bridge continues to be one of the most popular rock bands in the genre. Alter Bridge continued moving forward and had a tremendous amount of success over the years where Creed was defunct. Though, unfortunately for Tremonti and Phillips' former bandmate Scott Stapp, there would be more controversy that would lie ahead. In 2006, reports began to surface that Scott Stapp was seen on video with none other than Kid Rock and two unknown women engaged in consensual adult acts. The video at the time was claimed by an adult entertainment company that said that they planned to release the video. From their claims emerged the infamous quote from Scott Stapp, who reportedly said in the video, quote, "It's good to be the king." Fortunately, the video was never released as it was apparently stolen from Scott Stapp's house during a 2002 burglary, and neither Scott Stapp nor Kid Rock wanted the video to be released to begin with. Though, unfortunately, the video itself caused a bit of a rift between Scott Stapp and Kid Rock. Stapp discussed the video in a 2009 interview with Spin, in which he revealed that the video getting out there apparently caused a rift between he and Kid Rock. He said, "What sucks about this is Bob, Kid Rock, and I were friends. He went over to my house and we jammed and hung out. When we were in Tampa playing with Metallica, and I walked into his trailer, there were some strippers. It's a time in his life and a time in my life that we'd like to put behind us and not publicize because we have children now, and they're in school, and their friends read. I know he's pretty pissed off at me that came out. We haven't sat down face to face. I did apologize to him that I didn't just burn that thing. I thought that was a skeleton in the closet that would never find the light of day." Fast forward to 2009, Creed made the decision to reunite, much to the joy of their millions of fans around the world. On April 27, 2009, the band announced a reunion on their website, saying that they plan to go on tour and release a new album. Tremonti said at the time, "We're all very excited to reconnect with our fans and each other after 7 long years." The band later that year released their comeback album, Full Circle, which was met with positive reviews from fans. Scott Stapp said of the reunion, "We've never felt like we weren't together. We're not looking at this as a reunion. It's more of a rebirth." Creed's reunion tour lasted for the next year and a half, and rumors of another album began to circulate. In an October 2013 interview, Stapp noted that the band had worked extensively on a new album during the course of 2011 and 2012. Stapp said that the album, though, was subsequently abandoned, and he wasn't sure why. And during the same interview, he hinted that the relationship between he and Tremonti had once again broken down. When asked about the current state of the band in an interview with Jesus Freak Hideout in 2013, he said, "No, it's not going to work right now. Let me tell you why. Right now, Mark has basically said to me, if you don't use the producer that I want to use, I'm not making a record with you. If you don't perform on stage the way I want you to perform, I don't want to do anything with you. If you don't use Alter Bridge's manager and business manager, I don't want to work with you. And if you don't change the way we've structured the royalties and the finances on the songs you and I wrote, Scott, I'm not going to work with you." And basically he said, if you just don't do everything 100% my way, then he doesn't want to do it. I can't do that, man, you know? I want to be an artist. I want things to be the way they've always been, which is Mark and I write the songs, and I get to express creative thoughts, and that we make mutual decisions. I can't be in a situation that's turned into a dictatorship where I'm told, if you don't do everything my way, then get away from me. That's basically what he's told me. A year after that interview, nobody was prepared for what would come next from the Creed frontman. In a shocking video message uploaded directly to the Creed Facebook page, Scott Stapp claimed he was penniless and under attack. The video was shocking and immediately drew concern from fans and his fellow bandmates around the world. Scott's video message included claims like, people's freedoms are getting violated. When someone can have all their money taken out of their bank account and no one's held responsible, when someone can be targeted by the IRS because of a clerical error, when someone can get completely slandered and lies made up about them and posted all over the internet and there's no consequences for those people, there's a problem. There's definitely a problem. This is not the country I grew up believing in this is not the America that I want for my children and their future. The video was 15 minutes long and immediately drew
What? Okay, whatever.